Okay, I'm going to call tonight's budget meeting to order and welcome everyone who's watching us online. We'll begin with the acknowledgement of treaties of peace and friendship. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognize Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik title and established the roles for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. Thank you. Llewellyn. Okay. Next is the reaffirmation of the oath of office. We do hereby accept the office of counsel and will diligently, faithfully, and impartially discharge to the best of our ability the duties of the office as imposed upon us by law. Thank you. Next is to adopt the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions from council? Okay, can we get a mover then to adopt the agenda as is?
So moved.
Can I get a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay. Councillor Carey, can you just read the agenda motion as is?
Motion 2021-10-25-B5 that the agenda be adopted as presented or as amended with changes.
On the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The agenda is adopted. Next is the statements of conflict of interest. If anyone has a conflict of interest that they need to acknowledge, do so with Clerk Treasurer Cormier before we to get to that point.
I'll have a conflict when we get to the barrier area.
Okay. Oh, we're not gonna. Okay. All right, so next we move to the business and the budget presentation sessions, the third session, so I'll pass it on to Chairperson Carmichael.
This is our third, I believe, our third budget meeting, and we're just going to continue where we had left off. Brenda had got some numbers in, I believe, from the government that we can put in as we get to that area in our budget. So I guess we can start with that, Brenda.
Okay, we did get the numbers. I'm just going to get myself down here. Oh, here. We did receive, oh gosh. We did receive our numbers from the province on the tax base for the village of Baldoon, which the tax base for the central zone is 272,986,950, and for the outside the central zone is 71,972,750. There will be a slight increase in the one for the residential. Assessments were put up this year, and then we had a slight decrease in the ones that was for the, I'm sorry, there was a slight increase for the ones on the outside, the fringe area, and a decrease on the ones for the central, which was mainly the industrial zone. So the industrial zone in 2021 was at 275,564,350, and as noted, it's now at 272,986,000. And on the exterior, outside the central zone, it was 68,796,300 in 2021, and compared to 71,972,750. So, in the revenue section, there was really nothing changed.
If I may, Your Worship.
sorry.
At this moment in time, I think it's appropriate there that, to the public, you know, the province has basically advised that a lot of the municipalities have had increases in their assessment because assessments in the province have gone up anywhere from 7 to 10%. With that said, I'm sorry to say that mine went up 10%, but by the same token, I'm looking at the village of Beldoon. It was stated in the local newspaper that of all the municipalities in the province of New Brunswick, that Beldoon was the lowest rate that was increased in all of New Brunswick. It was just based on the increase in tax assessment, Beldoon's rate only changed by $295,000, whereas many other municipalities were in the millions and millions of dollars, and that generated a tremendous amount of revenue for those municipalities. However, that will not be the case for Beldoon. I just believe the public should be aware of that you know, our increase of $295,000 isn't going to generate a whole lot of revenue for the village.
Thank you.
As well, I guess I will go back to the budget summary again. We did also receive our community funding equalization grant amount. Compared to 2021, it was $345,829. This year, for 2022, it will be decreased down to $298,139. So a loss of approximately $47,000 in the equalization grant. So as noted in the revenue section, for revenue under, God, I'm tongue-tied tonight, for revenue raised by our own sources, we had went through this twice, the first budget meeting and the second, and I don't really see any major changes that would be coming forth from that one. You'll notice the only one thing was what they call a PILT, and it's the property in lieu of taxes. So the adjustment for last year, which we received this year, is $425. So that's not a big change in revenues there. So to go through again, council has already made the determination on the legislative component of the budget. On the general administration, again, the only items that's missing from there would have to deal with cost of employment. And when council has those directives to the CAO, we will put those numbers in there. On the financial management side, again, our audits stays the same, common services, everything there. The only thing I would like to know on the civic relations, that if council is to continue the calendar for in 2022, they would have to increase that budget sum to accommodate that. As was noted, this year's is around $6,000 for that calendar. So in order to accommodate doing that again in 2022, that budget would have to be increased to be able to handle that extra expenditure.
May I ask what else is into that civic relations
Okay.
besides the calendar?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, anything in there, like I said, with relation to, there's some with committees that we pay for there. There is, I'm trying to find my civic relations here. There is the newsletter, when we publish the newsletter, anything that we do in nature that has to do, like I said, when we buy the flags and when we buy things like that, that comes out of there. If we buy pins or pens or any of those, the little agenda log books that we buy for handouts and things like that, that all comes out of that budget. So anything that is in relation to a civic relations type of event or supplies that we buy would fall under that budget. For instance, when we did do, not this year, but the previous year, when we did the website, we put it out there because that's kind of a civic relation type of website to inform the public and things like that. So it all comes out of that particular budget. So as noted, if the plan is, it would have to be increased, and council, they can give me the directive as to at what amount they feel that they want to increase that by, like knowing that this year's was $6,000 for the calendar.
I think we're gonna have to add it on if we continue next year again. Add the 6,000.
You want to try it?
If the other counselors are okay with this. I noticed that there's already people that are putting their name down for the new calendars, so that will be bringing back a little bit of revenue for it.
It wouldn't bring back enough to
No,
offset
no,
much.
no, it wouldn't bring
There's a
back
very-
enough, but-
Very minimal amount of calendars that'll be sold compared to what is,
Given out, yes, I agree, yeah.
so for now, we'll put that amount in there. I think even if we put it at 20, we would probably still be safe, like, I mean, you know, put a 5. The other thing I would like to note, and I noticed on my notes today, is in relation to the solicitor services, that has exceeded, so far, the budget by nearly $8,000 already this year. We still have about 3 months of billings that would come in. So if the services of the solicitor is going to be utilized more, more or as much as it has been in 2022, that budget would definitely have to be increased as well.
I'd just like to make a comment about that if I could. Obviously, when I was a counselor, I didn't solicit the need for our solicitor as much as I have, but I think we're doing the right thing by using our legal counsel more, and we should make it a habit to use Mr. Digg as much as we possibly can. So personally, I would like to see if we need to put more money in this particular side of the budget, that we do it, because I think first of all, I think he does a very good job from what I've seen, but I also think that we should probably be using him as much as we possibly can. So if it takes more to put in that budget, I would think that we could. That would be my suggestion, but whatever council thinks. But his services are he does a good job for us. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Right there now, we're about $8,000, and I probably, over that 20,000. And like I said, we're probably got about 3 more months because I wouldn't have all of October billing from the solicitor, and not knowing what's going to transpire in November and December, which I'm sure we'll be using again. So with that in mind, yeah, it would exceed that budget for sure.
So we don't have any legal, or a lot of big legal things on our thing. So in the past, the 20,000 was sufficient. So I'm assuming there's more usage of them at this point. I don't know. It's a lot
If
of
I
money.
may, we can debate this till the cows come home, but until all of the numbers are filled in and we press the button and see whether the budget balances or whether we're deficit or whatever, at the end of the day, maybe we'll ask Clerk Treasurer Cormier to highlight specific areas where we've increased the budget, so that when we do have all of the numbers, that we'll be able to see this is where we increase, this is where we, then we know where we need to go to cut, and if we want to keep the budget at that rate or whatever, because, until we have all the numbers in there, we're really not going to have a clear picture as to whether we are balanced or we're not balanced. So instead of debating it forever, let's pick a number, put it in there, and move on.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the best way, because we'll be here till midnight and
Okay,
3 days later.
Well, do you have a number, Councilor Carmichael?
I think we're already over by 8, so we could put 30 there.
I would suggest 30. Anyone want to comment on that? Everybody okay with that? Okay, so we'll move on then.
I also did get numbers from the Regional Service Commission on their budget and what our contributions would have to be towards their budget. You will see them throughout the different departments of our budget. I did confirm today just to make sure that there was no changes. So far, there's no changes to the numbers they gave me. Their budget will only get adopted by the board probably earlier in November. So up until then, I'm going to use the numbers they gave me to date. So if you see the RSC Administrative Services, it's $4,628 compared to $5,691 the previous year. So I think this part of the budget, the general government section, beyond the personnel part, the one item I do want to point out that was not discussed and that council will have to give consideration to is to the cost of employment for the new CAO position, as well the cost of recruitment so they're going to have to keep that in mind to put some figures in there to cover those for next year, because the recruitment probably won't be completed this year. I imagine it's going to run into a little bit of next year. So just keep that in mind, that that's a figure that council is going to have to come up with to at least what the salary is going to be, and then the cost of employment would have to be determined from that number, okay? So RCMP's policing services, I've reached out on the 14th of October to see if they had anything yet. They didn't. They said it would be a few days. I reached out again today, and they still don't have a number there for me yet. So I have to leave that blank. I know our assessment did not go down a whole lot, and the way the structure of that is, it's based on assessment and population, so you may not see a huge change in that number. And I know there's discussions across Canada on the raises in the salaries, and a lot of municipalities are beyond ourselves. I mean, across the country are asking for the increases they think they're going to see. They're even asking for the federal government to step in and help to offset some of those, and I don't know what's going to happen with that. It's a very good possibility we're at least going to be at that same amount and maybe a bit higher. I could put it in for now at the same and just highlight it so that it gives you a bit of an idea where we are overall when we get back to find out what we have left in the budget to balance. But
We could put it at 800,000, a good round number, and then,
just, yeah, to see. And I'll highlight it because it's not one we have yet, but I think it's going to be within that vicinity for sure. Previous year, the Regional Service Commission we're working on a study in 2020. We had a figure in there that we had to pay towards that study for policing services. They didn't have anything in 2021, and this year, again, they must be going to do some more work on that file regarding a regional police service. And so the amount that we owe to that part of their budget is $4,269. On the fire department budget, I believe we finalized all that the previous time. In terms of numbers, we kept our budget pretty much the same as it was in the previous year. Under the disaster control part, emergency measures, we did reduce it down from 8,000 because last year we increased it, not knowing what COVID expenditures we might have related to that, but we dropped it back down to 4,000, which I think, again, Regional Service Commission works on our EMO regional plan, and we'd have a contribution towards that part of their budget of $2,135. The animal control services should remain pretty much the same. We don't see that increasing. We have a contract with them, and they haven't determined that they're going to increase that any. Public Works building, when we did figure out this year was basically the first time that we were working with the Public Works and the Fire Department and splitting that whole office space expenditure between both of them. We had to kind of figure a guesstimate of what it would cost last year, but this year, compared to the expenses that I see, we could have reduced that down, as we had discussed previously. Again, the employment side is an item that we'd have to leave until a later. Engineering and outsourcing is one that of council, I'm not sure, we had the 15 in there. We're currently at 11,000, a little over 11,000 for this year so far. That's for billing up to the end of September. That all depends on the amount of small jobs that council is planning on or determining that they're going to do. So if they determine that they're going to do more smaller jobs this year that may require some engineering, then that cost could be increased. There was discussion on the road street work. I did not, we had put in the last time for the Mitchell-Lawler Road intersection, but then subsequently, since then, council had made a motion and they weren't going to tender that out. So I guess the question is this something that council planned on discussing and moving forward next year in terms of putting that in the budget?
Sorry. I think it's one that should be left in the budget if we're going to put a new engineering study or whatever, but I think it's an intersection that needs to be addressed, and I'd like to see money still left in the budget to address that issue.
Okay. The portion of the 50,000, Cameron, our Public Works, there will be some more roads, I believe, that we'd have to grade and add gravel to this year. We did some last year. With Mr. CEO Ferguson said he's going to meet with Mr. McClellan again tomorrow, so maybe I'll have that discussion with him. That might be able to be less than that amount, because depending on the amount of roads that he has left to do. Yes.
So, yeah, because I remember a couple of years ago, there was some work done back in Mitchell that was associated with this budget item. I don't remember, do those come before council for approval? And why wouldn't they?
Well, once the budget has been approved by council and it's stated in there that there was 25,000 for gravel grading non-paved roads this year. So because it's been an approved item in the budget, it gives the authority for the Public Works to go ahead and do that work. So if it was an item that was not in the budget, then it would require to come back to council to ask for that change and ask to be done.
I'm not sure how the rest of council feels about this, but if we're making some roads and streets priorities, then council should be able to determine, or should determine what those are, I would think. But I don't know how the rest of council feels. I don't have a vote on it, but if you're gonna have a strategic session and you decide what roads and streets that you want to work on, and those are the ones that should receive the work, I would assume.
And definitely if the council was to have that sort of session and they were to prioritize the roads, then that would be given to the Public Works. Then from there, they'd know what council's priority was.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
I think that's what we should do.
I feel that, like, when they are working on certain roads, that we should be aware, because at that time when that happened, back Mitchell, we weren't aware of it, and we found out through people calling and so on. So just if they're doing anything and it's going to affect anything that, for the people to be, to drive on the roads, I think we should be at least aware that the work is being done.
So, and again, just to note that part of this here was the 25,000 was to work on those gravel roads that normally don't get maintenance. For instance, the Henry Lake section was done this year, right? I believe, yes. So they had to put gravel. Grading them doesn't do the trick anymore because there's just no gravel to grade, and so you can't fill the holes or can't do anything. There's nothing. So Henry Lake was one of them that was done, and I believe there was a couple more on that list. So it didn't complete all. These are the gravel roads that are not regularly maintained by DTI or by the village on an annual basis.
Yeah. But I'm just kind of curious, so this one wouldn't have to come before council, but like something like the Mitchell-Lawler Road would.
Definitely.
But how does that work? Like the 25, so that one was a couple of years ago, that work, my understanding, I didn't think it had come before council, because we didn't know anything about it.
And-
But yet the other ones would have to come for, so how does that, I just don't, I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if the Mitchell Road, which, oh, when you were doing the crack filling and all that there, okay. Yeah, okay, so those were items, I guess, that they gave, at that time, I think it was talked about at budget time, that they were gonna do the crack filling on some of these streets, and they named which streets they were, and then they would only get done to the amount of the budget that was available. So I think there was only, at that time, it was identified was the Mitchell, Archibald, I think was the two main ones that had these large issues to deal with in crack filling, and they did the sections that was in comparison. So I think during budget, they were identified, and the budget was set, and from there, the directive was to the public works is to get whatever work you can get done for that amount of money this year, and then we'll budget more for the subsequent year. So they didn't do anything this year in that section at all. CEO Ferguson had brought in an item regarding the machinery that possibly Public Works could be using themselves to do some of this work before it gets too bad. He's still working with DTI to ask about the summer maintenance as to whether we can get out of the summer maintenance with DTI but still keep the winter. I think up until today, he reached out again to DTI to ask, did they find any information for him on that, and he hasn't received a response yet from DTI as to whether we can keep one and get rid of the other. So I think the point is that for council, I think up until that point, they're not really looking to move forward with purchasing a piece of equipment unless they can get rid of the summer maintenance contract. Am I correct in that assumption?
Not certain.
Either way, I think the equipment should be purchased if we have enough money in the budget. Maybe we could highlight it. And, because obviously Department of Transportation is not gonna do that for us.
Because there is money, like I said, in this year's budget, there would be the money available to definitely do that. So at this point, I'll leave that section of the street crack filling for 2022 vacant at this point until we get a determination as to whether the purchase is going to be done. CAO Ferguson perhaps may bring it back in at committee of whole to discuss it again and get some directive. So right there now, again, another item that I have not received confirmation on was the DTI winter and summer maintenance. One being, we're not sure if we can get out of the summer maintenance agreement part, and I have not received the rates yet for this year either. So I'll highlight those because they're both going to have to be looked at again when I get those rates from Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. They haven't sent me the rates yet to see if their rates are going to change on those maintenance. In the balance of the rest, like I said, the culverts and drains, those are all issues where we have culverts to replace. We have drainage issues that comes up, small jobs. Now, if there's any big jobs on drainage and stuff that council is going to be looking at, it would have to be put within this budget, in the transportation budget at this time, to be considered or be done for next year if council wish to proceed with any. Because $20,000 doesn't get you a whole lot of work. It's just more or less maintenance, repairs on culverts and a bit of, smaller drainage jobs and things.
Is this where we would put, we were sent an email there today about some flooding, if I want to use that word, that was going on the Noel Road. And there were two proposals made. If council is looking at moving ahead with that, would that fit in this category?
It would have to go into this this budget.
So, council, I assume, read the proposals. At the end of the day, I believe I don't know, am I at liberty to disclose that here? I mean, if we're gonna put it in the budget, at the end of the day, we need,
I know CAO Ferguson had asked me to put it on your committee the whole meeting Monday night,
okay,
and he will discuss with council. So if at that point we could still, we're probably gonna have to have another budget meeting anyhow
okay,
before finals, so maybe just leave it till, would that be fine?
yep,
Okay?
fine.
Okay. But just that would be within this section of the budget where money would have to be put for that. And in particular, if it deals with drainage, it would be that culvert drainage portion of it. Usually when you're talking roads and streets, it has something to do with the surface and things like that you're going to be doing. The other items are very smaller items like street cleaning and flushing. The street cleaning and flushing one, most of that budget is the roadside cleanup that's done every spring by various groups, and they get a donation or a grant for doing that. So most of that's what that's spent for. Storm sewer flushing again, winter maintenance private. That would be, we did have a 3-year contract that went out. It'll be finished in 2022. And then it was a 3-year bidding process, and it was bid for 3 years. So for the fall of 2022, for November and December, that would be a new tender that would have to go out before then, and it would pick up those 2 months. So right now, currently where we are, it's about $7,000 for the year under the old one, and we'll be good for January, February, March, and April of 2022.
Does everyone on council know where that is, where Ocean Avenue is? Council determined to know. Okay.
You know what when you go down to the Jacob River, Durham Harbor, when you used to one time go down over Furlot Road? Well, then they made the new road coming from Kearney over because they took out that bridge, and they made it coming over from, like, Kearney was like across from the Irving, and you come down and you come across. CN built the road there. And there's one section of the road that's just what used to be, when you come down across, then there's a small section that used to be part of the old Furlot Road on the bay side that DTI will not do. They said they're not permitted to do it because of the proximity to the bay and salt in the snow and things like that, like when they salt and sand. So they would not do that section. So we had to go out and ask for bids for that little portion to be done by private contractors because DTI will not do it. And so that's all of Ocean Avenue, all of it right up until you get to that point where Furlot would intersection, the old Furlot Road would have intersected. Right up until there, DTI does it. But the little stretch that just goes, that used to be from what used to be the bridge, the overhead bridge for the CN down, straight down, we got to get that done privately.
So that'll be every year?
Yeah, because they will not go and do it. So we had, like I said, we had to go out and ask for bids onto it, and we did do it 3-year, and that'll be coming up then the fall of next year to go out for bids again and get. And the street lighting, well, that's it's been at that 97, and I think we're probably still pretty good unless we add a whole lot of street lights, but where we are right now, that should handle it. Traffic services, again, street signs, lane marking. You'll notice there was a bit of difference this year. I put it up because when I got the billing this year, some of the rates, like everything else, are going up. Again, right corresponding with that, you got the $24,000 expense, but if you go back to the revenue, we get about $14,000 or something like that back from the province on that. So, and the traffic signals and the railway crossing signals, we have to pay a monthly fee for those.
So the new speed limit signs that we might be getting because we voted on that, is that going to be included in this?
I think CAO Ferguson has had some communications with DTI on that, and he's probably going to have to give you an update at the committee of whole on that part of it, because it still involves them. They still have a say into whatever, from what I understand. That and so he was been communicating with them on it, but I'll ask him to do an update for council on that. Because I believe in the conversation, he had a bit of a conversation with me on it, and I believe he said that the responsibility of putting up the signs are DTI to put them up, so. But I'll ask them to update council at the committee of whole. So that would take care of basically your transportation services beyond the human resource component of it. Same with the environmental health, which is the garbage collection service. Our tipping fees should be good at still good at the 34. The solid waste collection other was up this year fair amount because there was a lot of repairs on the vehicles. So it's actually exceeding what the budget is right there now. We are at, we had 45,000 and we're currently at the expenditure of 56. And again, we still have November and December months and some expenditures that would be associated with the month of October as well. So we're probably going to, see that quite a bit substantial. So 45, I'm not sure, even with a new truck, if that's going to reduce some, it definitely won't go below the 45. Whether it covers us for the year, like I said, with the maintenance and repairs we did on the other trucks, it really exceeded that this year quite a bit. Environmental planning zoning. On the planning side, again, the Regional Service Commission, our amount for this year, 2022, will be 108,362, down from 128,000 last year. The research and planning, that's sufficient for the services that we use on that Service New Brunswick site. On the community development, we have the industrial park, that's property taxes and some other smaller expenditures that are related to the industrial park. The rail spur line inspection, that was due to go out to tender a couple of years ago. It didn't go out to get bids again on the inspection services. There's, I believe, the gentleman had made that does the services now. He said there was some small repairs to be done, and it was around $1,400 to $2,000. But talking to CEO Ferguson again today, from my understanding, all those repairs and maintenance will now be billed to the sawmill, Schiller Sawmill. That was part of the agreement. I believe that former CAO went back to the settlement agreement, and that was part of it, that after 2019, those costs would be borne by the user. So we could probably put that back down to where it was, unless the inspection tenders come in more. And I believe CAO Ferguson had also sent out a list from CN of a number of items where the spur line needed repairs. And again, my understanding is if we do the repairs, that the users in the industrial park will be currently be the ones that'll bear the cost of that.
We just, just for on the spur line, so, in my understanding, see if our understandings join here. So the spur line inspection, we're taking that from 45 and bringing it down to 25, right?
Yeah, because 25 was the actual amount.
Okay.
With the current one we got, but it does have to go back out to tender. But I had increased it initially because the inspecting services that told us there was some repairs that had to be done there between 14 and 2000. But then in talking to CEO Ferguson today, he said any of those repairs would be billed to the user.
Right.
And so it would be a no cost. In the end, it would be a net cost. We would bill it out, but we would receive.
In terms of the
something that-
inspection and in terms of the
No, not
repairs
the
itself?
inspection, the repairs and the maintenance, but the
Okay.
inspection services, as the rate it is right there now, $2,500 a year for inspection services.
So my understanding, I was wrong in my understanding that those would be shared costs on the repairs. The repairs would be totally within the realm of the other entity?
The user, yeah.
Okay, because I thought it was half.
Nope, the settlement agreement states that it states that all the repairs.
Okay, well, that's good.
That was in the settlement agreement. Now, any other users that come in,
Right,
that would have to be a separate agreement that council would have to have drafted or include in with their, to have them pay a share.
okay,
You know,
Yep.
have to split the cost with the other user,
that's good.
I guess so. Okay, we're not going to talk about the human resource component of the salmon barrier, but the operating cost is the least of that amount. Normally, the operating cost would normally doesn't exceed any more than $10,000 a year. That's taking consideration that the Glencore picks up some of the costs back there. I don't know if that'll still apply next year while they're still going through their decommissioning or whatever, but right now they pick up certain costs for the operation, like the hydro, telephone. There's a few other smaller items that they pay the cost of those for back there. So. Economic Development, Regional Service Commission contribution to economic development. Again, we last year was $4,664. This year, our share is $14,032 on that portion of this Chaleur Regional Service Commission. So they must be going to play a larger role in economic development for the region, and that's why our increase is in there. Now, for the discussion, again, I believe this is the one council had a fair amount of discussion on last time in terms of economic development growth, grants, housing incentive, and student subsidy. From the directive of the last meeting, the growth part was to be taken out. The economic development granting was to be increased. And then the council was talking about the housing incentive program as to whether they are going to continue or not with that initiative. So if they are going to continue, we'd have to put an amount in there. And as I noted at the last meeting, council, we had already exceeded the budget for that. Right now, currently, we're at almost $33,000 for a $25,000 budget, with the likelihood of probably some more coming in before the end of the year, because I see some more houses have sold. So if council's not, I guess what I'm asking is, if you are not going to continue with that incentive program, then it will be a requirement at your regular meeting to remove that policy from the books, and then you could make it active as of January 1st of 2022. But I would need a directive from council in terms of whether you're going to do that or not.
So any thoughts on, again, I know we've talked about this before, but any brief thoughts on, has anyone changed their mind in terms of the incentive program as to whether or not we keep it or let it go?
Just a general comment from me. I know as true as I'm sitting here that council is going to have to make some very, very serious choices when the budget is finalized. You know, as I had mentioned earlier, we can put whatever numbers we want to put in there, but the other side of the coin is you know, this is an area where we will need to look at very, very, very closely. You know, even if we eliminated it all, I don't believe for a minute that there's still even enough money there that the budget will be balanced. So council needs to keep this area in mind and think about it seriously, because when we do have all the numbers in place and we see what the budget is, this is an area that I believe we need to visit very carefully.
I think Council, Clerk Treasurer Cormier is looking for a directive on the number to put in, right? You want us to-
If they're gonna, yeah,
okay.
whether it's gonna stay or not stay.
So do we leave it at 0 or do we put some money in? What's the wishes of council?
I haven't changed my mind. I think we should leave it at 0. I think it's done its time, this area, so I don't know what does the other councilors think?
I agree with Lillian.
Well, we have policies in place that if we are changing those, we should bring the policies forward and make sure that they're abolished or rescinded or whatever word you want to use. Because, you know, you are opening up a can of worms there. And somebody say, well, you have that policy, how come you have no money, or this type of thing. But with that all said, for me, I know this is going to be a very sensitive issue when all the numbers are present.
Anyone else? If there's one more council member says, we just leave it blank, then we're gonna leave it blank.
I was going to agree. We'll keep it at 0.
So I think that's enough of a directive from council, I think, right there.
So that'll be, have to bring on to our regular meeting to remove as of January 1st, perhaps?
If you wish, I will put that on your regular agenda for council motion.
Is it something that we would need to stop as of January 1st, or could we stop it at any time?
That's council's choice if they wish to.
I just kind of feel like if we've already gone over the budget, like was in the policy, was there, I'm assuming it was never worded that we have this amount in it and it goes to that amount is spent, but if we're already over budget, why are we waiting? You know what I mean? Like, that's just my thought, but.
So if you were to bring it forward at your November 15th meeting, then you would have to say what date that it would be. If it's from that date, then any applications from that date. If it's from December the 1st, that could be a choice. Council could just, I'll leave a line there, like a blank line, so council could fill in a date if they, whatever date they want it to come into effect, that they're repealing it, okay? Okay. And then we talked about the student subsidy program, and again, this year, like I said, it wasn't as utilized, and every year that goes down. It was 30,000 in there. It was around 17 this year that was expended. So if council feel they want to leave the 30 and try to work with that program to get more people to at least apply, businesses to apply, that's, again, or it could end up as a discussion item when council have to consider if they have to make some considerations on reductions in some places.
I say highlight it, and then we can discuss it. Maybe we can save a little bit there.
Other development services, again, the Schiller Regional Service Commission, for their tourism component of their budget, we going to contribute $18,991 compared to $31,303 last year. Campground operations, unless there's some big changes that could impact the operational costs, the $40,000 should be sufficient to cover those costs. Again, the personnel part, we wait for the directive of council once CAO Ferguson does these work tomorrow. Welcome Center, the promotion of tourism, those are smaller amounts. The interpretation, Jacket River Interpretation Center, that's at the Salmon Barrier. The Jacket River Tourism HR, that was already removed, I believe, the council previously when they discussed the budget that they would take that out. Public receptions, and then the Christmas decorating display, council opted to definitely leave that in for now. If you want me to highlight it, again, if it's one of those items, if you have to make some tough decisions, you may, it might be one of the ones that you have to look at, right? The recreation and cultural, now on the operating costs in that part of the budget for recreation and wellness, this year, I I know the expenditures have been up, but there was also some grants that came in that offset those. So if the 13,000, oh, right, the operational, I'm sorry, we already talked about the programs, and we upped it by $5,000 based on the recreation and wellness coordinators list that he supplied. Now, so the operational cost, which is the office, and that probably could be reduced a bit because it didn't take a lot of expenditures in that budget. We had about 13, so.
We had already also discussed to check out the programs to see which one are more functional than others, like the Zumba seems to be pretty popular, the yoga, and there's the exercise one. So we were going to look at that to see maybe, if we needed all three or keep on with the three or eliminate one of them that's not as popular as the other, maybe go down to two.
I do have a spreadsheet that I prepare every week for all three activities and the attendance, the cost, and the revenue. I will share that spreadsheet with council tomorrow, okay?
I'd like to suggest too that maybe we could work out some sort of deal with some of the instructors. Like I know other municipalities and locations will offer the space in lieu of having to pay the instructor. The instructor then makes the money off of the people who are attending. Do you know what I mean? So I'm wondering if maybe rather, instead of cutting some of those things, it would be, okay, you will donate the space, and, that way it leaves us still being able to offer the services, but at the same time, we're still, cutting some expenses.
Yeah, once you see the spreadsheet, and maybe that would help just have a better idea. And then maybe it's a discussion you would have with your Rec and Well coordinator, that he could have that conversation maybe with his providers. But I leave that to council to give that directive, but I can give you the spreadsheet that I keep. So the operational cost, like I believe that 13, like I said, there should not be an issue. The only difference would be is if I know there was talks previously about the summer camp program, and if there was going to be more resources put towards that, then that would impact that budget as to for the personnel to help operate. So I don't know if there's any proposed changes to the current summer camp program.
Well, I'll go first. I think that number's probably, maybe leave that. If you're anticipating some, and I probably agree with you that there's probably going to be an uptick in costs there.
Okay.
Maybe that's, if you wanted to put, I wouldn't drop it very
No,
much.
and I don't think we could drop it. What I'm saying is if they change the program that takes more human resources and a different type of program, then that's probably going to increase the cost.
Yeah.
So what I could do for now is put that amount in there, and maybe propose to the Rec and Wellness Coordinator that he maybe outline what he plans for next year's program. I'd have to get him to work on it within this week's, or, so we'd have something for council for the next budget meeting, and circulate that out to council so that they could look at it and have some feedback then as to whether that program would be something, the changes would meet what they're wanting, as well as then the cost associated with that. So I will ask him to do that.
Where would the cost for the splash pad go on that? Because that
Well,
is also.
those are on a to-do list thereafter. I'll go. Okay. As far as the programs themselves, like I said, based on the list that we looked at the last time from the Health and Wellness Coordinator, that we put that up by $5,000 based upon that list. I believe it's attached as well again. For this time, so council can see the whole list. Some things are operational, some things would be a capital expenditure. The community center hall, that's for the recreation center. and that includes all the costs associated with that. There's the maintenance, hydro heating, which is a largest part of that budget. Telephone services, insurances, property tax, supplies, water, bottled water supplies and stuff like that. So, and plus the caretaker. Now, as noted by CEO Ferguson, there is a tender that's going to be going out for the janitorial services for the two buildings combined. Until those bids come back, we really won't know what that impact is going to be on that portion of that budget. I'll just highlight it, and hopefully we'll have something back prior to when we have to submit the budget to the province prior to the 15th of November.
I just want to make a comment, Clerk Treasurer Cormier. The last, from the last council, the last term that we had a lengthy discussion on trying to make the recreation center, to maximize its usage. It's a beautiful building, it's a big building, but a lot of the things that were used to be there aren't there anymore, like the Power Club. Jack's room is there, it's being used, it's being utilized. The people don't, especially during COVID, they don't have as many weddings, they don't have as many ceremonies to use that. But it would be, I know the last council, we just didn't have enough time to get to it, but it would be, I think, worthwhile to find ways to maximize that building and to get as much use of it as possible. Because, you know, some of the things that maybe we want to do that include rooms, include space, maybe that's something that we should look at. Because it's probably a building right now that's underutilized, right?
On the marinas, that's the Culligan and Durham Harbor. The biggest portion of the one is on the Culligan. It's the installation of the slip and taking out of the slip. Again, that was under a three-year contract, I believe. I'm not, right off the top of my head, I can't say for sure if it's due to go out this year, but that's the bulk of that. We have portable toilets we put down there. There's some hydro down at the Durham Harbor that we pay for. So basically that takes up that portion of that budget for those two areas. Arena, again, there was a person. We had talked about the cost there. I will have a breakdown. I've got some more bills on the summer school program, which happened this year in terms of expenditure and revenue, and I will get that out to council within the next few days, hopefully. But if the operation of it all depends a lot on that as well, because the summer operation in terms of electrical is really high when you're running in the heated months. Like they're exceeding over $10,000 a month for the hydro bill alone. So that'll impact that budget quite a bit if that's the continued way that council wish to utilize the arena in the summer. We did have some major, about $25,000 of work that had to be done with the compressors and a brine system that was done when we opened up, after we opened up in the summer. So that would have to be one that would have to be a little bit more input into. Once I give council the breakdown on the program, if they wish to continue, then we'd have to look at it from that perspective as to how much would go in that budget to make sure we cover those costs. Fairs and festivals, I believe we spoke about this the last time, and the thing was to keep it where it was. Same with the parks and playground, and the parks and playground other. Librarian, that all stays, and then we have the other recreational cultural, which the Chaleur Regional Service Commission. We contribute $2,562 towards that budget as well. In terms of what the total that we contribute to the, you do have a spreadsheet I put in there from the CRSC. Yeah, it's in my packages, which shows you the total of what Belledune's contribution is in terms of all the services we receive and pay for at the Schiller Regional Service Commission. On the fiscal side, again, there's the borrowing, the interest, short-term borrowing, interest, long-term borrowing. If, as I noted previously, about the $300,000 that we still have outstanding with the Capital Borrowing Board, if council want to remove that from the authority down there, somebody will have to just let me know so I can bring a motion forward for council to do that, so I can advise them. The other is our principal and interest payments on our debts we currently have, bank service charges, and unless I don't know of any capital projects yet that council, this one here can come out because that fits into our reserve funds. We would be using, if we get any approvals on the Route 134 upgrades that we request, that our share would come out of our capital reserve. Now, in terms of what's that list? Okay, when we talked about, Councillor Carmichael just noted a couple of things. So the couple of things that would have to be considered for a budget or for capital projects, or one would be the transportation on the drainage issues that was discussed. The directive that was given to CEO Ferguson at the last meeting regarding signs, just to let you know, like if there's two signs, one at Turgeon, one at the Jacket River Drive, and the main sign, they could run as high and if not higher than $40,000 a piece. So those are items that you would have to think about in terms of where the money for those expenditures would come from. Again, CEO Ferguson will brief council a bit more on those, but those were the numbers he gave me. The campground public access was another project that council talked about, and how they want to proceed with that would be, again, another project that they would have to. The recreation and wellness, there's a talk about a splash pad. We haven't got all the completed costs yet. The recreation and wellness director is working, our coordinator is working on getting the complete costs from beginning to end. So council has a full picture of what that would cost to install, and then he's applying for funding. And then from that, you could, once he gets approval of what the funding would be, then you'd know what your balance, but at least you'd know what the full cost is without funding right up front. And then, pardon? Definitely, I believe there was talked about, for safety reasons, about safety and safety as well as security of the pad, fencing. And I know from CAO Ferguson, he said they had to do that at the one in Bathurst as well, for both those reasons, like to keep it safe and secure from any, hopefully from any damages and stuff like that. So that would have to be an additional cost. So we've asked to have all the components of that priced out so that there would be a full picture of the cost. There was a mention also about a running and walking track that was into this recreation and wellness coordinator list. I'm not sure what the pricing. Yeah, and I'm not sure, like, again, if that's something that is just a portion of the price, or if that's, so again, that would have to be one that would have to be looked at from beginning to end so that there's a full picture of what that cost could be, and then the funding that could be applied for, or if it's even a project that council want to consider in 2022, they may want to take one at a time, but those are discussions that council is going to have to.
I think the strategic session, that's one of those things, maybe we should set a priority list as to what, if we're going to talk about things that we're going to deal with in recreation, putting out what would our priorities be, right? That could be one of them. That's, but it, it might not be. We might, because we may look and say, well, that's already supplied, right? That's already something that we have here. So that session should be helpful in determining that, I would think.
Then we have the, again, we talked about the industrial park and the rail spur line, but again, after discussion with CAO Ferguson, the determination is, again, although we would probably have to either tender out or whatever for that job to be done and we'd be billed, we'd have to bill the other user to offset our costs. So it shouldn't have to budget anything for it because it should come in at zero. If something happens to the fact that the user does not want to, for some reason, pay those costs, I don't know what they're going to be. We haven't got anything yet on what that estimated cost might be. Then that's something that council would have to deal with, because if the rail line is not brought up to a standard that CN accepts, then they'll just shut the rail line down on, you know. So those are things that we have to deal with. But right there now, we're looking at revenue expense neutral based upon the agreement we have, the settlement agreement. Public Works, we talked about the all-jack crack filling equipment. And then the other thing is Public Works, they have a tractor that was a 1999 that the Public Works guys said that needs to be replaced. And the estimate's anywhere between $55,000 and $60,000 to replace one of those. So again, some of these can be capital expenditures. They can be used, you don't have to budget them specifically in your operating budget. You could budget them out of your reserve fund. But it's just things that, some of the things that come out on the list that different departments are talking about and looking at for things that need to be purchased or bought in the near future. So with all of that, it's still kind of hard to give council an idea of where their budget is, particularly where all the human resource and personnel is not in there yet. So it would be a figure that would be hard to present to you at this time until we get those figures put in.
If I may, a couple of questions. Are we still on the air here? Okay, good, because I don't want to be misquoted. Okay. The SPCA, where do they fall?
That's under animal control.
You know,
It's under protective services.
I think we're paying them $9,000.
Well, it's not, what it is we have a contract, it's $600 and some dollars, right offhand, it's $600 and some dollars a month for the services. And then if there's any animals that are taken in and have to be boarded, they're required to board them for so many days while they're trying to either get them adopted out. And we pay for a fee for each of those days, whether it's a dog or a cat. And most of the time it's cats. And if they have to, after so many days, they can't adopt them out and they have to euthanize them, then we have to pay for that euthanization as well.
So when we have constituents call the SPCA and they say that's not our problem, why are we paying them? I mean, at the end of the day, I'll put it this way. If I were looking at saving money, I'd cut it right off the SPCA, you know, because at the end of the day, I mean, my wife is looking after the bookstore up there, and they're volunteers working their butts off to sell books, to finance the SPCA. And those people over there, when we have constituents right here in Baldoon, because I've received 2 calls already, that over animals that were left and things of that nature, and they call the SPCA and they say, it's not our problem. So here's how I'm going to, I would like to see, I don't want to say the mayor, but I'll say at least the CAO, touch base with the SPCA or council send a letter to the SPCA advising them that at the end of the day, they're either going to do their job when they're called upon to do it, or we are going to look at the alternative means, because if they're not doing their job, I don't know why we're paying them, you know? So that's number one. The other item is that, you know, again, the salmon barrier and the campground, no, I'm just talking about the weeks. We have them going for, just give me a second here. Okay. We have them registered at, okay,
Councilor,
yeah, okay. They are registered to work 22 weeks and 21 weeks. So my question is, basically, why are they working that long? I understand that they need to do enough hours to get their unemployment. They're getting, I mean, if I do the math at 40 hours a week for 22 weeks, they're over 800 hours. And they only need 420. So, I mean, I do understand that, you know, we can't just have them say, for example, for 10 weeks. But I do believe that at one time, the previous council added 2 weeks prior to and 2 weeks after. And I know there was a reason for that, and I'm not questioning that. But I'm saying that now that's not necessary. So, for example, if I looked at the campground this year, normally the campground closed Labor Day weekend. They closed 2 weeks later this year. There wasn't a trailer in there, you know, there wasn't a person there. So I know they may have been cleaning up or things like that, but my point is that when we're looking at this budget, that is going to be things that we may need to look at, you know, and that's the only reason I'm stating it. I don't have a problem with them because I believe the campground and the salmon barrier are vital tourist attractions to our community. But I don't understand why the weeks are stretched the way they are. I don't understand the reasoning to it.
Well, so you're right. 2 years ago, I think we made that change as an assist, and at the time, you're right, it was necessary, and we did it. Perhaps maybe it would be best to have CAO Ferguson review that policy and maybe get back to council and say, recommend, take a look at it and see if it's still, you know, necessary, number one, and then perhaps make a recommendation as to some way that it could help us budget-wise, because if it could, and it doesn't necessarily hurt the workers, then that's something that we could look at. So how about that, Deputy Mayor Burke? And on both regards, in your first point, maybe I'll also mention that to CEO Ferguson and say, maybe he could investigate and for that and see if that's the kind of response we're getting. Yeah.
Sorry, just on the salmon barrier, I think the weeks are extended at the end of the season because of the late fall runs of salmon. So I think their season goes later, their weeks were extended to accommodate the counting fence at the largest run of salmon is in the fall.
We've also had some change in the dynamics of the salmon barrier in terms of, you know, how it's operating, and so there's a few things there I think with the salmon barrier we need to look at anyway. So maybe this we can include that in those questions. Anything else, Deputy Mayor Burke? Okay.
Okay. So we haven't, so until we get some of these other numbers again filled in, which are quite substantial, until that time, I guess there wouldn't be, to say where we stand with the budget right there now in terms of if we're over or under would be impossible to do without those numbers put in there, okay? So maybe we'll leave that one at this point. We haven't actually reviewed the utility budget at all yet, so this would be the first, and it's not a complicated budget because it's a very small portion of the community that's serviced by that. It's the budget has been pretty much standing the way it has for the last years because there's not a whole lot of changes that happens with that budget to cause it to be have to be fluctuate up or down a lot. We can't add users. We can't delete users because, you know, so my suggestion is if the budget could stay basically the same as what it was previously. The only difference you would see between the 2021 we had a $71,075. In 2022, we had a $72,124, and that all has to do with the amount of the surplus that was carried forward from the 2020 of $1,049. So that's the only fluctuation that you would see there. So if council is okay with that, I mean, I can go through it just to give you an idea. On the sales of water on the residential side, based on the fee, it's $500 for water and sewage fees. So we have basically, instead of having 30 homes operational back there, there's 29 because one burnt. So we're definitely not collecting anything on that one right at this point. The industrial side, their rate, they're based by the cubic meter, and the sale of sewage services. So basically what we get in user fees is $48,000. In terms of the other revenue, we do have the $23,075, and that's based on, there's a regulation that allows a percentage of your budget can be contributed from the operational budget for fire services. So what you see here is a revenue of $23,075. If you looked at your operational budget that we just went through under fire services, you're going to see an expenditure of $23,075. So there's a regulation that allows us to take a certain percentage on some items in this budget and contribute towards the utility. And then again, the other one is we had a surplus of $1,049, so our total revenue was $72,124. On the expenditure side, we have the administrative services, which take in snow removal, property taxes, insurance, media radio if we have to do boil orders, SCADA system, and administrative, because we're allowed to allocate administrative time because of the work that's done for the utility. On the purification and treatment, that takes in filters, chlorine, UV bulbs, equipment and repair maintenance. Source and supplies, it's water tests, courier costs, bottles and bottle deposits, and extra tests for boil orders. Transmission and distribution costs, power and pumping at the chlorine station, and billing and collecting. Again, there's an administrative time and the cost of supplies for mailing out bills. And then we have the other, which is the share of the operating contractor for the service that they provide there. So that's on the water side. On the sewage side, we have wastewater disposal, again under administration in general, there's snow removal, property taxes, insurance, administrative time allocation, wastewater collection system, the wastewater lift station, there's a cleaning telephone line that goes in there, it's a monitoring. We have power and we have repairs and maintenance. And then we have the wastewater treatment disposal, and that's where the tanks have to be emptied, and if it's one time a year, it can run you at least $5,000. It could be higher now, and again, we have the operator's cost at 20% of their contract at $7,300. So that brings your expenditures of $72,124 to equal your revenue of $72,124. Under fiscal services, we have no loans outstanding or anything. Everything's been paid in terms of loans. And the calculation here, you see the 23,075. There's a calculation that doesn't. It calculates automatically to give you what that amount is that we can take out of the operating fund. So if council, I noticed a really quick review of that budget. If you have any questions onto it, feel free to ask now or by email if you want, if you don't think of anything at this point. You know.
Well, let's just are there any questions at the moment? Just 1 second. Oh, excuse me, Councilor Kerwin. I'll just, no, are we off the?
Are we off?
Oh, okay, good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to ask about, we also want the Rorty's Point pave, that's going to come out from,
Rorty Point was put in the gas tax fund. And I'm
and
still waiting for approval from the.
we
province
also
on that.
want more work down there too, like walking trails, benches and walkways, so that's something also we would like to see in the future. And do you know anything about the smelter Glencore, if that's going to go down again, or rate or money or whatever?
We have, I don't know, I don't know. 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 I don't know In the assessment that was provided this year, before that came in, I went looking in the tax roll book to see if I could find out what it was reduced by. There was nothing listed in our tax roll book so far this year. When I talked to the representative at Service New Brunswick, they said that pretty much everybody in the community got their notice of what their assessment won this year. They have not completed the Glencore property yet in terms of assessment for 2022. That'll only be, they were projecting that they would probably only get that notice out by January 2022. But for budget purposes, for our tax base, they did an average of what they figured it might be. So if there's any big changes that after they're done evaluating and with the notice of assessment that should go out to the Glencore in 2022, we would see that in 2023. We would not be impacted by 2022. What we got for the tax base that sent me for that central zone for all the industry, that's what will stand for 2022. It will not be changed. If there is a big change, 2023 is when we'll see it.
Thank you, Brenda. That's what I wanted to know.
So, does that wrap it up then for tonight? Okay, Councilor Carmichael, if you want to adjourn,
I move that the meeting is adjourned at 8:22.
we have a seconder
I'll second it.
on the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you our next. Thank you.
Monday the 1st.
I mean, our next public meeting.
Monday the 1st is our committee home.
I'm going to add it on my agenda to schedule another meeting.